Did you ever wonder what Hollywood's biggest stars were really like when the cameras stopped rolling? The glitz and glamour of Tinseltown's golden age masked a darker reality. Some of the most beloved icons were absolute nightmares behind the scenes. What shocking behaviors did these famous faces get away with that would end careers today? Let's pull back the curtain on the meanest, most difficult, and downright nastiest personalities from Hollywood's heyday. Louis B. Mayer, the tyrannical studio dictator. What if the person who controlled your entire career also demanded absolute loyalty and compliance? Louis B. Mayer, co-founder of Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, was Hollywood's most powerful and feared studio boss. Behind his grandfatherly public image lurked a ruthless tyrant who ruled MGM like a personal kingdom where his word was law. Actresses particularly suffered under his reign, with Mayer using his position to make inappropriate advances on female stars. Judy Garland became one of Mayer's most famous victims. When she was just a teenager, he would call her "my little hunchback" and constantly criticized her weight. Studio executives, under Mayer's direction, restricted her food intake so severely that she developed lifelong eating disorders. Even worse, they kept her on a destructive regimen of amphetamines to suppress her appetite during the day and barbiturates to help her sleep at night, a horrific cycle that led to her eventual drug addiction. Mayer's control extended to stars' reproductive choices. When Judy Garland became pregnant at 19, MGM arranged an abortion to preserve her innocent image. This wasn't unusual. Many actresses found themselves forced into secret abortions at Mayer's command. As Ava Gardner later revealed in her autobiography, MGM had all sorts of penalty clauses about their stars having babies. The studio system under Mayer treated women's bodies as studio property to be managed for maximum profit. Harry Cohn, Columbia's dictator with a casting couch at Columbia Pictures, Harry Cohn reigned with such terrifying authority that employees would literally hide when they saw him coming. Known for his volcanic temper, Cohn had a desk button that locked his office door, trapping actresses inside until he was finished with his private meetings. His infamous casting couch practices were so blatant that Rita Hayworth, one of Columbia's biggest stars, once bitterly remarked that Cohn treated her like a piece of property he owned. Cohn monitored his stars with an almost obsessive control. He allegedly had Columbia's sound stages bugged so he could listen to private conversations, creating a culture of fear and paranoia. When Rita Hayworth divorced Orson Wells and began dating Prince Ali Khan, Cohn erupted in anger, not out of concern, but because he believed she was damaging her girl-next-door image that made money for the studio. He publicly demanded she return from Europe immediately or face severe consequences. The Columbia boss's cruelty wasn't limited to women. When director Frank Capra finally escaped his Columbia contract after years of conflict with Cohn, the studio had attempted to sabotage his career by spreading rumors throughout Hollywood. Cohn famously declared, "I don't get ulcers, I give them," a boast that perfectly captured his pride in making others suffer. His death in 1958 was met with so little genuine grief that comedian Red Skelton quipped that the enormous crowd at his funeral proved, "It just goes to show you, give the people what they want, and they'll come out for it." Jack Warner, the brothers' betrayer. Jack Warner, co-founder of Warner Brothers Studios, cultivated a reputation as a charming businessman. But those who worked with him knew better. His own brothers learned his true nature the hard way when Jack orchestrated a secret sale of the family's studio stock in 1956, pocketing millions while betraying his siblings. Even by Hollywood's cutthroat standards, this family betrayal shocked the industry. Warner's treatment of talent was equally ruthless. When Bette Davis, one of the studio's biggest stars, requested better roles and more creative control, Warner suspended her without pay. He was notorious for keeping stars locked in restrictive contracts for years while forcing them to appear in mediocre films. James Cagney, Olivia de Havilland, and numerous others fought legal battles against Warner's oppressive contract system. His penny-pinching became legendary. Despite Warner Brothers' massive profits, Jack Warner refused to improve dangerous working conditions on studio sets, leading to numerous accidents. When asked about providing better safety measures, Warner reportedly snapped, "Actors are cattle." This callous attitude extended to wartime, when Warner publicly positioned himself as a patriotic American, while privately resenting having to pay employees who left to serve in World War II. His reputation for duplicity was so well known that longtime studio employees had a saying, "You don't have to tell Jack Warner the truth, just tell him a better lie." Bette Davis, Queen of Mean. Bette Davis may have been a brilliant actress, but her co-stars often paid a heavy price for sharing the screen with her. Known for her perfectionism that frequently crossed into cruelty, Davis would publicly humiliate fellow actors whose performances didn't meet her standards. Her cutting remarks could reduce newcomers to tears, and she seemed to take special pleasure in establishing dominance on set. The infamous feud between Davis and Joan Crawford during the filming of Whatever Happened to Baby Jane exemplified her willingness to inflict pain. During a scene where her character had to drag Crawford across the floor, Crawford knew Davis had back problems. To get revenge for earlier mistreatment, Crawford secretly wore a weightlifter's belt and filled her pockets with heavy objects, causing Davis excruciating pain during multiple takes. Director Robert Aldrich later stated, "Crawford wanted Bette to suffer." Even Davis's own children weren't spared her difficult personality. Her daughter, B.D. Hyman, eventually published a scathing memoir titled My Mother's Keeper, detailing Davis's alcoholism, manipulative behavior, and emotional abuse. While Davis had undeniable talent, her need to dominate every situation left a trail of wounded relationships throughout her long career. When asked about her notorious reputation, Davis simply said, "When a man gives his opinion, he's a man. When a woman gives her opinion, she's a bitch." Unfortunately, she seemed to embrace the latter role with enthusiasm. Joan Crawford, Hollywood's nightmare mother. Joan Crawford projected glamour and sophistication on screen, but behind closed doors, she was battling serious demons. Her adopted daughter Christina's memoir, Mommy Dearest, exposed Crawford as an abusive alcoholic prone to violent rages. While some have questioned the book's accuracy, Crawford's obsessive perfectionism and volatile temperament were well documented by colleagues and friends. On movie sets, Crawford was notorious for her demanding behavior. She would count her lines to ensure she had as many as her co-stars and insist on elaborate lighting setups that often delayed production for hours. Fellow actors found themselves upstaged by her relentless scene-stealing tactics. When filming The Women, Crawford deliberately wore a distinctive hat in group scenes so audiences would notice her first. Despite having a relatively minor role, Crawford's insecurities fueled her worst behaviors. As she aged, her desperate attempts to maintain her youthful appearance became extreme. She would wrap her face in tape before bed, pulling her skin tight to minimize wrinkles, and subjected herself to painful beauty rituals that left her skin raw. Her perfectionism extended to her home, where she would wake guests in the middle of the night if she discovered water spots on bathroom fixtures. This combination of insecurity, alcoholism, and uncontrolled rage made Crawford one of Hollywood's most difficult personalities, both on and off the set. Errol Flynn, Hollywood's predatory swashbuckler. Errol Flynn captivated audiences with his dashing heroics in films like Robin Hood, but off-screen he was far from heroic. Flynn's infamous appetite for young women earned him the phrase "in like Flynn" as a crude reference to his sexual conquests. His behavior was so predatory that in 1943 he was put on trial for the statutory rape of 2 teenage girls. Though he was acquitted, the evidence suggested his innocence was far from certain. Flynn's autobiography, My Wicked, Wicked Ways, revealed his unapologetic attitude toward his exploitative lifestyle. He boasted about installing two-way mirrors in his mansion's bathrooms to spy on female guests, and kept a secret room in his yacht specifically for taking advantage of inebriated young women. His close friend, actor David Niven, later admitted being uncomfortable with Flynn's constant pursuit of underage girls. Beyond his sexual misconduct, Flynn was known for his heavy drinking and violent outbursts. On film sets, he frequently arrived drunk and unprepared, causing costly delays. During the filming of The Adventures of Don Juan, his alcoholism had become so severe that body doubles were used for many scenes he was too intoxicated to perform. Flynn's destructive behavior caught up with him, and he died at just 50, his body ravaged by years of substance abuse and his reputation permanently tarnished by his predatory history. Clark Gable, the not-so-perfect leading man. Clark Gable's charming smile and reputation as the King of Hollywood concealed a much less appealing reality. Despite his cleaned-up public image, Gable was known throughout the industry for his terrible personal hygiene. Multiple co-stars complained about his chronic bad breath and body odor, with actress Vivien Leigh particularly suffering during their romantic scenes in Gone with the Wind. Gable's treatment of women revealed his true character. In 1935, while filming Call of the Wild with Loretta Young, Gable reportedly forced himself on the actress, resulting in her pregnancy. Fearing scandal would destroy both their careers, Young disappeared for months, later returning with what she claimed was her adopted daughter. Only decades later did the truth emerge when Young's daughter-in-law revealed that Young had come to understand the encounter with Gable as a sexual assault rather than a consensual affair. Behind his leading man persona, Gable could be shockingly callous. When his Gone with the Wind co-star Hattie McDaniel wasn't allowed to attend the film's premiere due to segregation laws, Gable initially threatened to boycott in solidarity, a commendable stance. However, when studio executives pressured him, he quickly abandoned his principles and attended anyway, leaving McDaniel to celebrate the film's success at a separate colored-only venue. This willingness to desert his convictions when personally inconvenient revealed the self-centered man behind the heroic image. Roscoe "Fatty" Arbuckle. The party that ended everything. Once one of Hollywood's highest-paid silent film stars, Roscoe "Fatty" Arbuckle's career imploded after a notorious 1921 scandal. During a wild Labor Day party in San Francisco, actress Virginia Rappe fell seriously ill and died days later from a ruptured bladder. Arbuckle was accused of sexually assaulting her with a bottle, causing the fatal injuries. The ensuing tabloid frenzy painted Arbuckle as a depraved monster who had crushed the young actress beneath his 266-pound frame. Though Arbuckle was eventually acquitted after 3 trials, the court of public opinion had already condemned him. The scandal exposed the debauched party culture of early Hollywood, where alcohol flowed freely despite prohibition and drug use was rampant. Even before Rappe's death, Arbuckle's off-screen behavior had raised eyebrows. His drinking was legendary, and fellow performers reported his personality could turn mean and aggressive when intoxicated. The Arbuckle case became a cautionary tale about the dangers of excess in Hollywood. Studios quickly established morality clauses in contracts and created publicity departments dedicated to covering up stars' bad behavior. While contemporary evidence suggests Arbuckle may have been innocent of the most serious allegations, his reputation for wild partying and boundary-crossing behavior had created fertile ground for scandal. His career destroyed, Arbuckle spent his final years directing films under a pseudonym, a stark reminder of how quickly Hollywood could dispose of even its biggest stars when they became liabilities. John Barrymore, the self-destructive genius. John Barrymore possessed perhaps the finest acting talent of his generation, but his self-destructive behavior and alcoholism gradually destroyed both his career and personal life. Known as the Great Profile for his handsome features, Barrymore was equally famous for drinking binges that could last for days. During these benders, he would become cruel and abusive to those around him, often lashing out at the very people trying to help him. His unprofessional behavior on set became legendary. While filming Romeo and Juliet, Barrymore was so drunk during a crucial scene that he vomited on his co-star's gown. On another production, he arrived on set, having completely forgotten he was making a movie at all. Directors learned to film his scenes early in the day, before his inevitable drinking began. By the late 1930s, his alcoholism had become so severe that he couldn't remember his lines, requiring cue cards placed around the set. Barrymore's death in 1942 spawned perhaps Hollywood's most macabre story. According to Hollywood legend, later confirmed by his granddaughter Drew Barrymore, actor Errol Flynn and director Raoul Walsh stole Barrymore's body from the morgue and propped it up in Flynn's living room to shock him when he returned home from a night of partying. This disrespectful prank perfectly symbolized how Barrymore's once towering talent had been reduced to a sad joke by years of self-destructive behavior and alcoholism. Mickey Rooney, small man, massive ego. Mickey Rooney achieved fame as America's #1 box office star in the late 1930s, but his outsized ego made him insufferable to many who worked with him. Standing just 5 feet 2 inches, Rooney seemed determined to compensate for his small stature with a gigantic personality that steamrolled over everyone in his path. His need to be the center of attention was so extreme that he would deliberately upstage other actors during scenes, drawing focus away from their moments in the spotlight. Rooney's treatment of women was particularly problematic. Married 8 times, he was notorious for his infidelity and callous behavior toward his wives. In his autobiography, Life is Too Short, rather than showing any remorse, Rooney boasted about his sexual conquests and even exposed private details about former partners like Ava Gardner. This kiss-and-tell approach violated the privacy of women who had already suffered from his poor treatment during their relationships. Perhaps most troubling was Rooney's treatment of his Andy Hardy co-star, Judy Garland. Though they appeared to be close friends on screen, Rooney frequently mocked Garland's insecurities about her appearance behind her back. Later in life, when Garland struggled with addiction issues that paralleled his own, Rooney showed little sympathy for her difficulties. His self-centered nature prevented him from seeing how his own behavior contributed to the toxic environment that damaged so many of Hollywood's young stars, including himself. Frank Sinatra, the temperamental chairman. Frank Sinatra's musical genius came packaged with a volcanic temper and vindictive streak that made him one of Hollywood's most feared personalities. His mood swings were legendary. One moment, charming and generous, the next exploding in rage over minor inconveniences. During the filming of Marriage on the Rocks, Sinatra became so enraged about a scheduling change that he put his fist through a wooden door, delaying production while his hand healed. Sinatra's connections to organized crime figures added a menacing dimension to his bad behavior. those who crossed him often found themselves targeted not just by Sinatra's public insults, but by mysterious threats and career sabotage. When a restaurant host failed to seat him quickly enough, Sinatra reportedly had mob associates pressure the establishment until it went out of business. Journalist Dorothy Kilgallen, who wrote unflattering articles about him, claimed to receive death threats traced back to Sinatra's associates. Women who rejected Sinatra's advances faced his wrath. After actress Angie Dickinson ended their affair, Sinatra had her scenes in an upcoming film drastically reduced. His treatment of his ex-wife Ava Gardner was particularly cruel, alternating between obsessive pursuit and public humiliation. While Sinatra's artistic contributions remain undeniable, his bullying behavior and willingness to use his power to punish perceived enemies revealed a deeply insecure man who wielded his influence like a weapon against anyone who displeased him. Charlie Chaplin, the comic with dark secrets. Charlie Chaplin created the beloved Little Tramp character that made audiences worldwide fall in love with him. But off-screen, his behavior toward young women revealed a disturbing pattern. Chaplin had a documented preference for teenage girls, marrying his first wife Mildred Harris when she was 16 and he was 29. His second marriage to 16-year-old Lita Gray when he was 35 ended in a scandalous divorce where she claimed he had demanded degrading sexual acts and attempted to force her to have an abortion. On movie sets, Chaplin was known as a tyrannical perfectionist who would fire crew members for the slightest mistakes. During the filming of City Lights, he forced his co-star Virginia Cherrill to reshoot a simple scene where she says, "Flower, sir," 342 times. When actors didn't perform exactly as he wanted, he would humiliate them in front of the entire crew, reducing many to tears with his cutting remarks and impatient outbursts. Chaplin's political views eventually led to his exile from America during the McCarthy era, but his reputation had already been severely damaged by multiple paternity suits and sexual scandals. One particularly ugly case involved actress Joan Barry, who filed a paternity suit against him in 1943. Though blood tests proved Chaplin wasn't the father of her child, the court ruled against him anyway, forcing him to pay child support and further tarnishing his public image. Despite his genius as a filmmaker, Chaplin's personal life revealed a man whose treatment of women and colleagues fell far short of his artistic ideals. John Wayne, the bigoted American icon. John Wayne portrayed the quintessential American hero on screen, but his personal views revealed a deeply bigoted man at odds with his noble screen persona. In a notorious 1971 Playboy interview, Wayne openly expressed racist and homophobic opinions, declaring, "I believe in white supremacy until the blacks are educated to a point of responsibility." These weren't just the casual prejudices of his era. Even by contemporary standards, Wayne's views were extreme and unapologetic. Wayne's politics affected his professional relationships as well. He was a leading figure in the Motion Picture Alliance for the Preservation of American Ideals, an organization that supported the Hollywood blacklist during the McCarthy era. Wayne enthusiastically participated in ending the careers of writers and directors he suspected of communist sympathies, showing no remorse for the lives he helped destroy based on often unfounded accusations. On film sets, Wayne could be intimidating and controlling, particularly toward those he considered politically opposed to his conservative views. During the filming of The Green Berets, a pro-Vietnam War propaganda film he directed, Wayne created such a hostile environment for crew members with anti-war sentiments that several quit the production. His insistence on portraying a sanitized version of American military actions demonstrated how Wayne's political agenda often overrode artistic integrity, resulting in films that served his personal ideology rather than historical accuracy. Orson Welles, the boy genius no one could stand. Orson Welles arrived in Hollywood at 24 as the boy genius who had terrified America with his War of the Worlds radio broadcast. His remarkable talent came packaged with an ego of astronomical proportions that alienated nearly everyone who worked with him. During the filming of Citizen Kane, Welles treated crew members with such condescension that many refused to work with him again, despite the film's eventual recognition as a masterpiece. Welles's perfectionism often crossed into abusive behavior. He would berate actors for minor mistakes and subject them to exhausting retakes until they performed exactly as he demanded. When filming The Magnificent Ambersons, he forced the cast to reshoot scenes dozens of times, while he criticized their every gesture and inflection. His refusal to compromise made him nearly unemployable in the studio system, where collaboration was essential. His unreliability became legendary as his career progressed. Welles would accept financing for films, spend the money, and then abandon projects when they didn't meet his impossible standards. This pattern left a trail of unfinished works and angry investors across Europe. On a Dick Cavett television appearance in 1970, Welles demonstrated his capacity for cruelty by viciously attacking fellow filmmaker Jerry Lewis without provocation, revealing the meanness that lurked beneath his artistic genius. Though undeniably brilliant, Welles's behavior ensured that his career would be defined as much by burned bridges as by artistic achievements. Jerry Lewis, the comedy tyrant. Jerry Lewis made millions laugh with his comedy, but those who worked with him rarely found the experience amusing. On film sets, Lewis was notorious for his controlling behavior and explosive temper. When directing his own films, he would use multiple cameras to monitor crew members, firing anyone he caught taking breaks or not paying complete attention to his performance. His perfectionism extended to obsessive control over every aspect of production, from lighting to costume details. Lewis's treatment of his longtime comedy partner Dean Martin revealed his capacity for selfishness. As their act became increasingly successful, Lewis demanded more creative control and screen time, relegating Martin to the role of straight man, despite his considerable talents. When Martin finally ended their partnership after a decade of growing resentment, Lewis reacted with bitter public attacks rather than acknowledging his role in the breakup. Later in his career, Lewis's annual telethons for muscular dystrophy showcased his contradictory nature. While raising millions for charity, he displayed troubling attitudes toward the people he claimed to help, referring to those with muscular dystrophy as "my kids" in a condescending manner that many disability advocates found offensive. Behind the scenes, telethon staff reported facing verbal abuse and humiliating treatment from Lewis if everything didn't run according to his precise specifications. Despite his philanthropic work, Lewis's need for control and inability to treat others with respect made him one of Hollywood's most difficult personalities. Alfred Hitchcock, the master of suspense and cruelty. Alfred Hitchcock created some of cinema's greatest masterpieces, but his treatment of actresses revealed a disturbing pattern of obsession and psychological abuse. His fixation on cool blonde actresses like Grace Kelly and Tippi Hedren went beyond professional interest, with Hedren later revealing that Hitchcock had sexually harassed her and threatened to destroy her career when she rejected his advances. During the filming of The Birds, he subjected her to 5 days of having live birds thrown at her face after she refused his sexual propositions. Hitchcock's cruel sense of humor often targeted people unable to fight back. He was known for elaborately humiliating practical jokes, including once handcuffing 2 actors together before a dinner party and pretending to lose the key, forcing them to remain locked together for hours while they needed to use the bathroom. These jokes revealed a man who took pleasure in other people's discomfort and used his power to place them in humiliating situations. His controlling nature extended to every aspect of his actresses' lives. When working with Hitchcock, female stars found their wardrobes, hairstyles, and even personal lives subject to his approval. He would send spies to report on their activities away from the set and become furious if they didn't comply with his vision of how they should behave in public. This disturbing blend of artistic genius and psychological cruelty made Hitchcock one of cinema's most complicated figures. A brilliant director whose treatment of women revealed a deeply troubling personality behind the celebrated films. Joan Fontaine and Olivia de Havilland, Hollywood's hateful sisters. The bitter feud between sisters. Joan Fontaine and Olivia de Havilland stands as Hollywood's longest-running family drama. Both became major stars and Oscar winners, but their rivalry extended far beyond professional competition. Their mutual animosity began in childhood with physical fights. Fontaine claimed in her autobiography that de Havilland once fractured her collarbone during one violent confrontation, and only intensified as they became successful actresses competing for the same roles. The sisters' nastiness toward each other reached its peak when Fontaine won an Oscar for Suspicion in 1942, beating de Havilland, who was also nominated that year. When Fontaine attempted to congratulate her sister backstage, de Havilland reportedly snubbed her and walked away, a public rejection that deepened their rift. 3 years later, when de Havilland won her own Oscar, Fontaine allegedly refused to congratulate her, saying, "I'm sure she'll be just as gracious to me as I was to her." Their feud continued for decades, with the sisters taking every opportunity to undermine each other publicly. When their mother died, de Havilland didn't even notify Fontaine of the funeral arrangements. Their last public interaction occurred at the 1979 Academy Awards, where they were reportedly placed on opposite sides of the stage to avoid confrontation. The sisters' lifelong hatred finally ended only with Fontaine's death in 2013, making their feud one of the longest and most bitter in Hollywood history. A stark reminder that sometimes the cruelest relationships exist within families. W.C. Fields, comedy's meanest spirit. W.C. Fields created a comic persona as a misanthrope who hated children and dogs, but those who knew him confirmed this wasn't far from his actual personality. Fields was notoriously difficult on film sets, frequently arriving drunk and being unable to remember his lines. His alcoholism was so severe that he reportedly consumed 2 quarts of liquor daily at his peak, keeping alcohol hidden in props around the set to maintain his constant state of inebriation. Fields's hatred of children wasn't just a comic routine. When working with child actors, he would deliberately intimidate them off-camera, using profanity and frightening behavior to ensure they stayed away from him between takes. During the filming of You Can't Cheat an Honest Man, Fields was so cruel to ventriloquist Edgar Bergen's young daughter Candace that she remained terrified of him into adulthood. His treatment of colleagues revealed a deeply bitter man. Fields would frequently undermine other performers, attempting to upstage them or have their lines cut if he felt they were getting too much audience attention. He maintained grudges for decades, refusing to work with anyone who had once crossed him. While his comic genius remains undeniable, Fields's real-life personality matched his misanthropic screen persona, a man whose wit came with a cruel edge that made him one of Hollywood's most difficult and unlikable personalities behind the scenes. Tallulah Bankhead, the wild child who broke every rule. Tallulah Bankhead scandalized Hollywood with her outrageous behavior and complete disregard for social norms. Known for her raspy voice and uninhibited personality, Bank made no attempt to hide her bisexuality, drug use, or alcoholism during an era when such openness could destroy careers. She famously declared herself ambisextrous and reportedly had affairs with both male and female stars, including Greta Garbo and Marlene Dietrich. Bankhead's substance abuse made her notoriously unreliable on set. She would arrive for filming under the influence of alcohol or cocaine, sometimes forgetting her lines entirely. During stage performances, she was known to suddenly break character and make inappropriate comments to audience members. Her biographer described her as getting abortions like other women got permanent waves, revealing the chaotic and consequence-free lifestyle she maintained despite the health risks. Perhaps most shocking was Bankhead's complete lack of modesty. She regularly greeted visitors while naked and would walk around film sets without underwear, deliberately shocking crew members. During the filming of Alfred Hitchcock's Lifeboat, she caused delays by refusing to wear underwear while climbing a ladder for a scene, leading the director to quip, "I don't know if this is a matter for the costume department, makeup, or hairdressing." While some found her honesty refreshing in an industry built on fakery, Bankhead's self-destructive behavior and disregard for professional standards made her one of Hollywood's most difficult stars to manage. Edward G. Robinson, the friendly face with a nasty streak. Edward G. Robinson created an unforgettable screen persona as the tough gangster with a snarl, but colleagues found the real man could be just as intimidating off-camera. Despite his cultured public image as an art collector and intellectual, Robinson had a legendary temper that could erupt over minor issues. During the filming of Key Largo, he became so enraged over a lighting change that he refused to continue working until the original setup was restored, causing expensive delays. Robinson's political activities during the McCarthy era revealed a troubling willingness to sacrifice others to save himself. When called before the House Un-American Activities Committee, Robinson, who had previously supported progressive causes, named former friends and colleagues as communist sympathizers to protect his own career. This betrayal devastated many in the industry who had considered him a principled man, revealing the self-preservation instinct that lay beneath his intellectual facade. Though small in stature at just 5 feet 5 inches, Robinson used his powerful personality to dominate film sets. He would demand script changes to increase his screen time and argue with directors over character interpretations. His insecurity about his height led him to insist on platforms during scenes with taller actors and special camera angles to make him appear more imposing. While his acting talent remains unquestioned, Robinson's combination of intellectual snobbery, quick temper, and willingness to betray colleagues when threatened made him one of Hollywood's least trustworthy personalities.